It's like, I can rearrange this and make a Darth Maul saber. And it's like, I'm gonna just try Beat Saber that way. You know, maybe I'll be Star Wars kid, you know, make some really cringe, embarrassing video. And I did, and it was pretty cringy, but at the same time, I had lightsabers and I could pretend to be Darth Maul. And even to this day, it still is kind of, you're figuring it out. You're one of the first people to try to solve this challenge. Like, I had nobody to go off of to find out, like, how do I optimize my view to size the window to get it to look like, you know, I'm playing this guy's playing a desktop game. My head is the camera. People are seeing what I'm seeing. And so my movements, how I do things, how I look at things, you know, if I want somebody to see something, you know, I'm kind of a cameraman. I'm not just the player. I'm not just the streamer. I'm kind of a cameraman. But with mixed reality, with a camera, you're a TV producer. You're a, you know, movie producer.
You're a performer as well. At that point.
You're the performer. You're the director. You're the writer. You're the performer. If I take that camera and put it in a different position, I have a different angle. And then if I record a bunch of runs at different angles, I can edit that together like a music video. Okay, you know, these are professionals, and I show them like the clip and they're like, how are you doing that? When I see somebody who's like a professional video producer go, how are you doing that? I'm like, okay, I did my job right. Somebody's gonna see my resume and say, okay, I've never seen this before. And so on the very first line, I put, I make things work, period. And it's always been that way with me in technology. I work at it until it's fixed, and it always does get fixed in one way or another. And so setting up the stream was kind of the same thing.
It is so good to have you on the podcast, Rage. Is that what you go by, RageSAQ or Rage?
RageSAQ. I've had the name for a long time, and so I've gone through various formats of it and different things. So it's whatever, you know. Rage is probably the most common.
I will rock Rage then. One of our members, Zombie, he's a VR streamer as well, and he recommended you and said you're a huge inspiration for him and his content creation journey. So stoked to have you on. I know Zombie is very much looking forward to this podcast, and I think any aspiring VR streamer should be looking forward to this podcast.
Oh, wow.
So it is great to have you on. Could you give the listeners a sense of where you're at today in your journey? You've been in content creation for a while, but where are you at right now in terms of what platforms you're on, how long you've been creating content for, things like that?
Yeah, so let's see. I've been streaming for about three and a half years. You know, I had a Twitch account for a long time, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm partnered on Twitch as well as YouTube, but my primary outlet is Twitch. And then I upload select content to YouTube. You know, some stuff's better as a VOD. That's YouTube's forte. Some stuff's better live, which is better for me. And that's kind of where I feel Twitch is still the leader and just the best overall experience. So I've been at this for three and a half years. I started doing it because I got into VR and I thought it was so cool. And it was really early on. You know, I've been in VR for over 4 years now. Which is right when the first commercial, you know, consumer level good headsets came out. The Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive both came out around the same time. I started with the Rift and later I got into some other headsets. But I got the Rift and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know. And I've wanted VR ever since I was a kid. You know, I remember going to Disneyland when I was like 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that, and in their Tomorrowland, in their futuristic section, they have these pretty cool arcades with the latest arcade technology, and there was a really, really rudimentary, what we would consider to be total garbage, like Google, you know, Google, what's their cheap thing? Their cheap little cardboard, Google Cardboard, would blow it away. You know, but back then it was cutting edge technology, and they had Dactyl Nightmare, which is, you know, anybody who's been in VR for a long time is probably familiar with that particular game, because it was one of the first most popular ones just because of Disneyland. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And every year I was like, man, VR at home would be the coolest thing. And then the Nintendo Virtual Boy came out, and that was a total bust. It was not ready for what they're trying. And so when VR came out, I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing. More of my friends need to play. I want all my gaming friends that I play with, like none of them had VR. And I was like, oh, dude, first person shooters, they're unlike anything else. They're so good. You guys got to check this out. So I'd record clips and like, oh, I can do it in OBS, but then where do I put it?
Why did you start recording clips and things like that? Was it you just wanted your buddies to see what you were doing, or?
Yeah, I wanted to share it. I was like, you guys don't know what you're missing with VR. It's just so cool. You know, the experience that you get. And so, I first started off just recording to disk with OBS, and the files would be big, and getting where would I put them to get my friends to see them. So I was like, why don't I just upload to Twitch, and I can use the clip feature after the stream there, and I can then just share that to them. They can just watch it right away. It's like, oh, that's pretty easy. So I basically started streaming to Twitch, kind of not expecting to have anybody ever show up. And a lot of the times that was the case. I hear this story all the time. People are like, oh man, I just started streaming, but like nobody comes to my channel. I was like, yeah, that's, you start out, somebody will eventually stumble across your channel, and then more and more, and maybe, they'll share a link. You did something cool they really enjoyed. They'll share a link, and they'll get another friend on it, and somebody will be browsing a channel for something that you're doing, and they'll stumble across you, and it just, it takes some time. It takes effort.
Well, I want to get
real
into that journey a little bit more, but before we go deeper into your content creation journey, what if we wound the clock just a little bit back? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Arizona, and that's where I am right now. I've kind of been living around here my whole life, and how
did you stumble into the content creation side?
So I stumbled into the content creation side kind of a number of different factors. In high school, we actually had a TV. There was two different classes that I took, 2 different years. There was a TV video technology class, and it was it was just like, you had these little segments. It's like, okay, you're going to go into the editing room, and you're going to make a 1-minute video and mix together a bunch of sources. And this is back when our video source was VHS tapes, the old school analog technology.
When is this, just to set a time frame roughly?
So I'm 40, so this was 25 years ago. So this was 95 through 99 was when I was in high school. I think
that's really cool. They had video editing classes, because I think they could do better with video editing classes even now.
Yeah, I was often, I was not a great high school student because I was bored. I built my first computer when I was 10. I've been into computers for such a long time, and so I was way ahead of the game as far as like what schools had to offer when it came to computer classes. Like the computer classes were like typing classes and stuff like that, and I'd been at a keyboard since I was like 6. So by the time I was in high school, I could type at about 130, 140 words a minute. So it was like, why am I in this typing class? Why isn't there a better computer class? But eventually I stumbled upon this audio video technology class, and there was like a little booth. It was probably just a closet that had been converted in this old brick building. The school had been around for like 60, 70 years, so it was all brick inside and out. And they had a mixing station, the jog dial. They had your ins, your outs. Like I've got a DaVinci Speed editor, and it's like this is just a modern version of what I had in high school to play with. And so I would like, oh, I want, let's see if I can remember. It was like, I want to make a music video with part of Stargate, which was a relatively new movie at the time, and just find some music that goes along with it. And I was listening to music with friends, and I found like probably Metallica, I think it was. I don't remember the exact song. And then I was like, okay, I just need to make a minute. And I was like, I'm going to sync it up. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I haven't thought about this, but this is kind of how it started. And now I'm doing it, as part of my content. And so I just like the part of the song's like, okay, here's the intro. Okay, here's the when the beat drops and it gets heavy. I was like, okay, I want to sync this up. I'm gonna take the scene where I'm going slow at first, and then they start fighting. I don't want to sync it all up, and I thought that was the greatest thing. I love doing that, and we did some other technology stuff. CAD.
Were you alone in thinking it was the greatest? Did your friends think it was cool too, or were you just like totally geeking out over this thing? And
it was a small class for some reason. It was by far the coolest room at school. I mean, to me, if you're a tech guy, it was by far the coolest room in school. They had pretty state-of-the-art computers where the computer class did not, because they only had like 4. It was like probably like a 12 or 14 person class. It wasn't a full 20, 30 person class. And it was taught by like the lacrosse, coach. It was not like a feature, it's like not like honors math where they got like the real math pro teaching the math class. it was just kind of it was an elective, but it was just an elective that was really up my alley. You know, we did CAD and we did website design. And,
was there any inspiration from like your parents on the tech side, or was this kind of your own path that you'd forged?
Yeah, no, so it's funny. Both of my grandparents worked at IBM back when, you know, they were growing into the giant conglomerate that they were, and they continued to work from after they diminished and did not, you know, after Microsoft took off and all the other PC companies took off, and IBM kind of took a backseat in that personal computer and even business computer world. And so I've grown up around computer technology my whole life. You know, my dad worked for printing companies, and they were very early on adopting computer technology for typesetting and graphics and stuff like that. So I've grown up around computers, like in my house, at my grandparents' house when I'd visit, and it's just always been an interest of mine.
Yeah, I recall that being a huge influence on my life too. Because my dad was really into tech and getting the early computers, and that I grew up around that, and that's what set me on my path as well.
Yeah, and that's what my career's been in. Has been in tech. I'm a director of infrastructure where I work right now. You know, I've been doing my job for like 22 years or something like that, in various things. You know, I jumped in both feet. You know, I had a part-time job in high school fixing computers, and been doing it ever since. So the technology part of it, you know, is a long part in my life. And so this technology class I had, mixing videos, was one thing. And then the next year, I had a class with some friends. I didn't have any like my best friends growing up in that class, but the next year I did. We had it was like the video production class, and it was our job to like record school events and put on record the announcements that went out over the video screen, the TVs that were in each class. And we had somebody from the local news station or something like that, a video engineer. He was a camera operator. You know, he'd do the cabling, the audio. He'd do the mixing. And I don't know how we got him, because he was a pro, and we were learning some things from him. And so we had these TV cameras. You know, you have them on your shoulder. They're big, huge. You got the tapes, and we'd go around and some of our official stuff we do in the class was, okay, this period you have to go down to the choir room for the where they're having a concert there. You got to record the concert in the middle of the day. Or tonight you need to record, you know, the drama performance or something like that. Or, you know, we'll do the football game. Usually the football game was hotly debated over who got to do that one. But we had this, you know, actually good equipment. The school that I went to had, you know, it was a public school, but it had pretty decent money.
Were you were you intentionally becoming a student of technology, or would it just so happen to be that that's how things panned out?
These classes were just like, they were just the interesting thing for me. You know, like I wasn't planning on doing anything in AV. I wanted to do IT stuff. And it's an adjacent field for me. It was always something that was kind of cool. But like, I actually learned quite a bit that later in life, and, you know, doing streaming stuff is actually somewhat useful.
That's what I've noticed. It's just like how
camera
much
angles
that has helped
and
you.
Yeah.
Nowadays, and played such a huge role, is that, and I was wondering, was it like intentionally like, I love this, I am going to be good at this, and that parlayed into your career from school?
No, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, so like for my career in IT, I had a job in high school when I was a junior, and I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing. I get to make money and build computers all day long. It's like, that was a dream, you know. I always wanted to do that. And then I'd basically use most of that money to continue to build my computer home, buy upgrades and new processors and graphics cards and hard drives and all this stuff coming out, and that's how I could afford it. And so that's where all my money went. But this was just kind of, you know, it was just something I picked up at school, and I learned a little bit, and it's just something I had, I guess, you know, in my DNA by that point. So, you know, I look at my old streams and they were really rough. You know, there's all the things that I've learned over time that I tell viewers, other content creators that I know. We have a channel on the Discord that's tech talk, and whether it's fixing your computer, we help people with that. Whether it's I need to build a new computer, what do I buy? And we talk about that. The stream production, how do I make sure the image quality looks good? My gamma levels are messed up, and there's a bunch of areas that the right answer, and so kind of going into a lot of the skills, what I would consider my core skills in technology is making things work. It's kind of funny. One of the top lines on my resume, one year I was searching for a job and having a hard time finding a good one. I was like, I need to redo my resume. I'm going to be putting it out to some places I really like. I want to make sure it looks good. And I was struggling. I was like, what do I put up in the resume to make it look good? And like the very first line, I was like, you know what? Somebody's going to see my resume and say, okay, I've never seen this before. And so on the very first line, I put, I make things work, period. And that's honestly,
a good statement. It's such a great statement.
Yeah. And so like at first I was like, this is not, you're not supposed to do this. This is non-traditional. But honestly, that's really me. It's I can't sleep at night, like going back to some of my first technology with my computer, messing around with my computer. If I break something on my computer, I couldn't sleep at night until I fixed it. And it's always been that way with me in technology. I work at it until it's fixed, and it always does get fixed in one way or another. And so setting up the stream was kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, how do I learn this?
You were telling me that you had like such an established career in the IT sector, in technology. I'm trying to see where the connection goes into the content side more heavily and choosing a platform. Were you consuming other people's content online?
Not really. I wasn't really much onto the stream. I mean, I checked it out a little bit, but 3.5, 4 years ago, it was a different scene. Today, it's huge. It's so huge these days. All the big names on Twitch are, they're basically, if you look over the last year, you could definitely say they're market makers for gaming platforms or gaming, game formats. Rust is like bigger than it's ever been, and it's because of the OTV Rust server that's got all of the big names on it. Among Us was a small-time game by a small-time developer until somebody's like, hey, this is a cool game. I can stream this. This is unique content. Nobody's got this. The big names picked it up and it's blown up because they turned it into an entertaining content format. There's Phasmophobia. That's another one. Super small time game, not the greatest production values, but they got the horror thing right, and it's multiplayer, and it's perfect content for streaming. And those are some of the biggest games of 2020, or even some of them are earlier than that. And it's because of streaming platforms. So the streaming is it's so huge right now. It was not that it was small when I got into it. It's only been a couple of years, but it's just bigger and bigger and bigger. So I was not big on the streaming scene on the consumption side before I started. But as I got into it, I meet people, I get some viewers showing up. Oh, have you seen this guy? I was like, oh, no, I've never heard of that guy. I'll check him out. He's another VR streamer. Wow, that's cool. Learn something from him, exchange ships, because VR streaming is a lot more complicated to do.
Yeah, I want to get that.
Streaming.
But I'm still curious on this content. Did you start on YouTube before you started on Twitch?
No, I just started on Twitch because it was convenient. I remember one day I was like just asking one of my friends. I was like, "What do I need to do to stream to Twitch?" Do I just grab one of these broadcasting platforms? And my friend, who never was really a streamer, but he had already checked it out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, everybody uses OBS. Just get OBS, hook up your Twitch account, and it's a piece of cake." And that part is easy.
Yeah,
getting started is super easy.
So your buddy said, and you wanted to create this content, you want to share it. Why did you want to go stream this? And would it start at VR content or?
It was all about VR content. I wanted to show my friends like, hey, you're missing out by not getting this, because it was one of those things. All the old time gamers, like me, I've been doing it forever. VR has had a sordid history, and so everybody was super jaded about it. Oh no, it's not going to be good. There's the typical, and it's still to this day is like, oh well, I'm going to wait for it to get good because it's first gen technology. It's going to make me sick. The quality is not going to be very good. The games aren't very good. And if you were to compare side by side with where desktop gaming is at right now, where you have games that have $100 million, $200 million budgets. They're some of the most sophisticated forms of entertainment around, like Cyberpunk, had Keanu Reeves putting out an actually really fantastic role, super sophisticated motion capture, production levels that rival, Hollywood movies, and VR is not there. There's been one game really that's been at that level. Half-Life Alyx had that level of polish where just every single area of it, they had some of the best people making audio mixing, motion capture, graphics, and they were inventing a lot of the technology because they started long before really anybody else started on a big VR game.
Was anyone making VR content when you started on Twitch?
A small number of people, yeah. A lot of them aren't making content anymore. But yeah, I got connected with VR creators, just be like playing, one of the first games. The first game I probably really started streaming regularly was the game I got hooked on not long after I got VR, and that was Onward, which is a tactical first-person shooter. It's a slower format. If I think like back in the day, what game is this? Formula is this kind of like? And it reminded me of like old school Rainbow Six. Back in the Quake days, the Quake 1, the Quake 2 days.
Quake 2, best game I ever played.
Quake 3, yeah, Quake 2 was great. I played a lot of that. Quake 3, Unreal Tournament, they were fast. The weapons were completely unrealistic. It's an action frag fest. And then Rainbow Six comes out. This is a little bit different. You have to go slow where your aim goes all over the place. Your weapons are much harder to use. You have to kind of work at it a little bit. Whereas before, working at it was like you're going to rocket jump off this wall, and you're going to fall down this tube, and you're going to shoot a rocket at somebody across the map, and you're going to time it just right. So when they hit the bottom of that tube, they take the rocket and you get them. It's totally different as a game. Now it's like, okay, I got to move slow because people can hear me, and I can't move fast. You have to be tactical. And I was like, I thought it was okay. I played it for a little bit, but it never grabbed me. Like by the time Quake 3 came out, I was gone. Like Quake 3, I played that game so hard. I multiplayed that, I was going to tournaments, and like for a little while, that was like my first, hey, maybe I can go pro at Quake 3. And because I was on, some of the really popular Quake 3 servers and Quake 3 Arena, or Quake 3 Rocket Arena, which was my favorite mod, was super, super competitive. Sega ran some Quake 3 Rocket Arena servers.
Did you ever
back
compete
in the day.
MLG circuit?
This was way before MLG. MLG did not exist back then. It was like QuakeCon and derivatives. This kind of was the name of the game. It was like everybody had a local tournament. You had your city tournaments, and I played in those. And then there was the state tournament, and I played in a couple of those before I was like, yeah, I'm not cut out for this. And then, once then maybe somebody would do a multi-state tournament. And then, the season ender was at QuakeCon. That's where all the money was. QuakeCon had the multi-million-dollar prize brackets. And so that was cool. So I played Quake 3, and there was, I was in a really crappy job I had from high school. I mean, it wasn't a crappy job. It was a tech job. They hired me, and I was 16. I was making money and got a lot of experience, but it wasn't going to go anywhere for me. And I was tired of it. And so I quit like right when I was done with high school, and I was like, I don't have a job right now. I'm gonna let's give this Quake 3 competitive make money thing a try. And I did that for probably 3 months, ending at a state tournament that I placed like, I don't know, 20th or something like that. And I could just see like the level that I was at, I was pretty good. But the level that the people who were in the top 4 were at was just a totally different level. And I was like, yeah, I didn't, I was getting to the point where like every day practicing 4, 6, 8 hours a day, it's like, I was getting bored of it. I was like, oh, this is tough. This is not what I love about it. I don't want to turn this into a sport where I'm practicing every day, whether I not enjoy it or not. I just have to do it. You have to be at that level. And I was just like, nah.
I remember that. I remember when I used to be a former pro gamer, and League of Legends turned into a job. And when that happened, that your relationship just changes completely.
It does. Yeah. And I grew up playing games, and I love video games. I remember in like 3rd or 4th grade or something like that, me and my best friend growing up, like every class since high school with him, I knew him forever. And we were like all about video games, and one day in class we're like, oh, we should design a game, because we had been able to look at a little bit of programming in BASIC. And he had some older brothers, much older brothers, like his oldest brother was probably like 12 years older than him. So by the time we were in 3rd grade, they were graduating college, and some of them had degrees in programming. So they were, they were the real deal when it came to programming, and went on to have careers in programming their whole lives. And so like we'd pick up little things from them and see what they were doing. Like, oh, we can do that. Let's make a video game. You know, we should tell our teacher like we might have to make a video game and we might not be able to do some homework because we're gonna be. It's like a job. It's like teachers probably hear that stuff all the time. But like that was a dream way back in the day is to be involved in video games in some way, to be programming and.
I mean, that's programming today. It's shifted to content creation. It's we're not even just a pro competing professionally, but content creation. A lot of people want to become content creators because they think it's easy. And I think going back to your point, getting set up on Twitch and getting your OBS and thing was fine. But how was those first few tries on Twitch 3-4 years ago?
Well, you know, I figured out how to get the stream set up, how to capture VR. You know, my very first attempt at capturing VR in a broadcastable way. It's not easy, and I've gone through multiple iterations, finding like how do I make this better, how do I tweak this, and things like that. But
what are some of the unique challenges on the VR side? I think a lot of our listeners probably assume that it's complicated, but are not very aware of the depth of complication.
Yeah, so, you know, your typical, so I'll go over like what, if I stream a desktop game, which I do a little bit, mostly I stream VR, but, you know, Cyberpunk, I streamed that, you know, who's going to miss that opportunity? It was a lot of fun. But really my focus is VR. And so with VR, you have two screens. You have two screens, one for each eye, and they're a little bit different. And the shape of them, they're actually taller than they are wide. Because you have two screens instead of one, and they overlap, and you have a part of your vision that's binary overlap. I'm sorry, stereo overlap, where you're actually seeing the same content with both eyes, but you're seeing one on each screen. And so you have these. If you were to look at the raw VR view, if you say show me the whole VR view, which you can do with some of the VR tools like this, Steam VR is one of the main VR platforms, and there's a button that says show the VR view. So some people start off capturing that, and it's okay. And then it's like, okay, I want to stream with my right eye because I'm right-handed, and if I'm going to aim down sights and shoot at something, if I want to show my viewers aiming down the sights, I got to capture the right eye. Well, that was actually a challenge because game engines. Most VR games are on Unity. It's a pretty easy to develop platform. They went in hard. Unity as a company went on hard on adopting VR and getting their VR tools really good. And they're probably, you know, there's a lot of developers I know complain about issues that Unity has. But on the tooling side, everybody's like, yeah, their tools are just great. You know, it can be challenging to program in Unity, but their tools make it just so easy to get into. But the Unity engine games, which is what everybody was playing, indie developers were all over Unity, easy to get into. Unreal, you really have to know what you're doing with Unreal. That's what I hear. I'm not a programmer. But I always hear that like, Unreal is great if you know what you're doing. If you have experience with Unity, you build your game and you make it look amazing. Unity, a lot easier. Unreal, hard. But the game engine, and even Unreal is like this, only shows one eye view on the desktop. So you capture that window in OBS, and that's the left eye. Up until very recently, like within the last year, you couldn't display a different eye if you captured the Unity default view. So you have to find a different way to do that. So you capture Steam VR's view, but then you find out later, I remember, you know, streaming this back in the day, I was like, wow, there's weird artifacts on the stream. It's like, there's like a mask of little lines that you can see of where like the quality is lower. Comes to turn out the video quality you get out of the Steam VR view is downsampled because they don't want it to consume resources or something. I don't know. Nobody knew why. It's gotten better, but back in the day, all this, you know, I'm streaming and like, man, there's that line there. That's not supposed to be there. And then find out, yeah, it's something built into Steam VR that's an issue. Like, okay, well, what else is there? You find plugins. So somebody made a plugin for OBS that hooks right into the VR runtime where everything is composited from the game and then just formatted for both eyes to see and sent to your headset. You tap into that, and that's a high quality source. But you have to format it. You have to, okay, you see the whole eye, including like lens distortion, because the lens isn't square. The lens is like, you know, it's a squarish, ovalish, you know, cutout shape. It's the size of the shape of the physical lens inside of the headset. And so you have to, okay, now I have to crop in here and crop in here, and now I have a square image. Well, that square image, where's your perspective? Because what somebody sees out of their eye in how they kind of perceive it, the player perceives it, might be different than what you're displaying on the screen, because now you had to do all these things to try to get high quality input. So
and is this primarily, is this you trying to think through the perspective of the viewer to create the optimal viewing experience?
So that's what I was doing. I was like, how do I get to, I want it to look better. This looks kind of like crap, you know, it doesn't quite look right. The view's all weird. People can't, you know, first it was like, how do I make it so that people can see? If I'm going to get a 6 snipe, you know, if I'm going to get the sniper rifle and there's somebody 1,000 meters away and I got to hold the rifle and make the shot just like you would in real life. It's not like desktop where you have your mouse and you can easily move it around. You have to hold it. You have to have the proper position. You know, I have a tool. It's this was also something that kind of came up back in the day when I started, called a gun stock, where you have your controllers and you put your controllers in the gun stock, and then it replicates having a rifle, because funny enough, guns are biomechanically engineered to be optimal for the human body to hold something and aim really steadily and shoot it. And so having 2 controllers floating around doesn't have any of that advantage. So some people made gun stocks, the one that I got onto with earlier, and the one I still consider to be the best, the ProTube, made it so it's like, oh, here's some holders for your controllers, and then they're adjustable. You can slide them back and forth and rotate them to get that optimal ergonomic position. And then you can use the butt stock on your shoulder. You have the cheek pad to put your cheek on, and you have 2 points. So then you have 4 points of contact, just like a real gun. And so then, you know, so everybody's like, oh no, you use a stock, you're a cheater, you know, because you have this advantage of you have this accuracy advantage. And it's not necessarily true. There's plenty of great players that don't use stocks. There's some disadvantages to them, but I was all about that, because I was in Boy Scouts growing up, and there was rifle ranges at summer camp every year. And so I knew how to shoot a gun. You know, we weren't really like a gun family. It wasn't something we did all the time, but it was something I kind of did somewhat frequently just by being in Boy Scouts. So I knew how to shoot a gun the right way. I was decent at it. And so I'm like, oh yeah, we got this. Look at, guys, check out, look what you do in VR. It's just like shooting a gun in real life. You're going to shoot other people. It's a totally different experience from desktop games. So I had to figure out all these things, like, okay, how do I make it so that when somebody's looking at my screen, it's a lot like when somebody's looking at my stream, what they see on screen is a lot like what somebody sees when they play a desktop game. Because
that's what I think. You don't want to know necessarily that, you don't want the viewer to think you're playing a VR game, do you? Or you do?
Well, you do want them to know you're playing a VR game. I think so, but it's a little more challenging, that presentation level up to the same quality of desktop games, because nobody who's playing a desktop game has to worry about, how do I make sure it looks the right way? Everybody has the same look. The crosshair's always in the same place. You know, the little game UI that's in the bottom, the health and all those stats, that's all been designed. Everybody, somebody plays that, they see it, they watch a stream, they see the same thing. Maybe somebody's got overlays and stuff like that, but the experience of watching it is the same as playing it. And getting that for VR is a lot harder, because VR is a 3D stereoscopic depth format, and playing it, you're in the game. It's like, people, there's these videos you can see online of you see somebody's playing like a pool game, and they're about to lean over onto the pool table to try to make a shot, but there's no pool table there, so they just fall right on their face. And so VR is like being there. It's like playing that game. So it's like playing paintball. I played paintball as a kid a little bit, and Onward was that tactical, slow first-person shooter game that was in VR, and I played the heck out of it. I loved it. I was in the competition scene a little bit.
Was there? I'm guessing there is a very robust community of VR enthusiasts generally. Maybe not, like, the streaming audience is still growing, but the community around VR, there is a lot of loyalists there.
Yeah. No, the VR is niche, and there's plenty of Discords out there. Each game has, most of the indie developers, they have their own Discords. There's plenty of like general VR community Discords. I was involved in those.
Are you able to lean on others that are creating content in this space, or are you almost pioneering
a little bit? But when I was starting, it was very much, and even to this day, it still is kind of, you're figuring it out. You're one of the first people to try to solve this challenge. Like, I had nobody to go off of to find out, like, how do I optimize my view to size the window to get it to look like, I'm playing this guy's playing a desktop game, and it's easy to watch. because, one thing that you commonly see, and I just happen to, I don't know, I'm good at not jiggling my head around when I stream, because every little movement, your head's moving around all the time, but your brain processes all that out, so it looks smooth to you. Unless you're, the whole world is shaking. You're on a roller coaster. Obviously, that looks shaky. But if you're just walking around, if you strap a camera, the action camera, GoPro, whatever, to your head, and you walk around, there's every step, there's movement, there's jitters and stuff like that. But you don't experience that. You don't perceive that when you're walking around, just normal life. And so you're getting, it's like VR streaming is like that same thing. You have a camera strapped to your head, and any little movement you do with your head is on the stream. And so some people didn't, I don't like watching VR streams. They're always so shaky. And I don't know why, but I mean, I've made conscious effort when I first started streaming to try to make it a smooth experience and be aware that, like, my head is the camera. People are seeing what I'm seeing. And so my movements, how I do things, how I look at things, if I want somebody to see something, I'm kind of a cameraman. I'm not just a player.
Interesting.
I'm not just a streamer.
Are you ever thinking
I'm kind of
about
a cameraman. I at times I am.
Are you thinking about your own experience, or are you always thinking about the viewer's experience?
I'm thinking about both.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused on my experience, and I do, and so again, since I've been doing the VR streaming a long time, I've gone through all the different tools to see my chat while I'm in VR. And so I'm always like, I have my floating window on some games that support different things. There's a floating window. I can see the chat window, and so I can see what's going on. I like to interact. I like to chat with chat. And so I'm always conscious that, somebody else is watching the stream. And so what I'm doing is what they're seeing. And so if I'm like, oh yeah, and but my vision, if I'm like, oh yeah, see that guy over there. And for me, maybe I'm looking and he's like, oh, it's about that big for me. For a viewer, it might be like that big. And they're like, what's that? Because their perspective is they're looking at a screen that's a couple feet away, that's, 24 inches in size. Whereas the equivalent for me is I'm looking at a screen that's like 500 inches in size, and it's right there, and I can see, the stereoscopic nature of it. I can see how far away it is. It appears as far away as it would be something in real life. So, your perception works different there.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of bending over backwards to create a good presentation, a good experience for the viewer. There's more than one way to stream a game. So that's first person streaming, right? So that's the making the first person shooter experience equivalent for a VR first person shooter. And so you do all kinds of things on your canvas in your stream to, okay, I'm going to put like some lines on the OBS, and I'm going to look at, okay, if I look here, what do I see? You have to look under the tip of your nose through your VR headset. It's like, okay, if I'm looking here, they see this, okay. And so that means that's around here. I want to move this up higher, so that way it's like, so instead of like the gun scope that they're seeing is like way over here in the corner, if it was like a desktop game, it'd be right fat in the center, because that's what the viewer, the player experience is going to be like. So, okay, I'm going to shift this here, shrink this a little bit, stretch it, move it around until I get that same experience. And after a while, it was a long while, probably over a year, I was able to kind of feel like I got that level on my first person stream for VR. Looked a lot like a desktop game as far as the overall viewing experience. And then there's a whole other experience, which is why I have this green screen room called mixed reality, where I have a camera over there in addition to this one. This is my face cam. I have another mixed reality camera that's a super wide angle lens, and what you're viewing then is it's almost like a TV production. You're viewing a camera, and I'm on a stage, and I'm playing like Beat Saber is kind of the big one. That's the one that really my popularity blew up on. I went viral with a couple of different things on that. And you don't see what I see. I mean, you do, but you don't see the same view. I see like Beat Saber is a music, kind of a rhythm game. It's got laser swords, lightsabers. It was their brilliant hook. Oh, let's make basically a rhythm game with lightsabers. And yes, it's the coolest thing in the world. And yeah, and so what you see first person is very different than what I do with the mixed reality. It's like third person VR, where you're seeing me in the experience, and I am like, playing it. It's like watching what has a better
game
audience, third person or first person?
So there's been, it's hard to say. There's plenty of popular streamers that do first person only. There's plenty of streamers that use avatars and do third person, kind of like that came later versus the mixed reality. There's a company called Live, shout out to Live, who makes the Beat Saber mixed reality, and that's the the super popular thing that all those videos that blew up when Beat Saber came out, and mine was one of those. That's where I got a lot of a success. I was one of the first VR mixed reality streamers for Beat Saber. There was others as well, but a lot of those people were really new too. Whereas I'd been playing for like a year and a half before that, streaming VR a year and a half before that. I was kind of a little bit ready for it, and
you're like ahead of the curve in that sense.
I was maybe a little ahead of the curve, and so I was kind of ready for doing a good job on that, and being first had a lot to do with that, and I guess some part of that was going back to what I learned in high school with AV and TV production stuff. Really, really basic, but it was we had the real cheap version of the tools, but it was like we were TV producers and
it does seem like you have a native advantage in the VR community in that you've just been a lifelong tinkerer.
Yeah,
and in your profession you're still very much tinkerer. How much, in terms of being a top VR streamer or even a mixed reality streamer and content creator, how much do you think you have to invest in equipment? Because for maybe a top end streamer, you're talking, let's say 3,000 to 5,000, maybe more if you get like a DSLR camera that can spike it up to in the 7K region.
But they go DSLR cameras, mirrorless cameras go very, very expensive.
Yeah, but on your side,
overkill cameras.
On your side, if you were to take a stab at what it takes to be one of the top mixed reality VR streamers, what's the ballpark?
You can. So fortunately, there are actually like some good, what I would consider like entry level quality. There's like I have these really nice mirrorless cameras that people use for real video production or just really good taking pictures as a professional photographer. But you can get there's GoPros. You can get them used on Amazon. Amazon likes to put a renewed version of it where they like refurbished it, and they offer it for like almost a third the price. And so they're barely more expensive than a webcam. And they have a super wide field of view. That's kind of GoPro's thing. Make a super wide field of view, capture the whole scene. Don't even worry about where you're placing it because the view is just so wide you'll get something. And they're little, they're like a 1-inch sensor. I don't know how big they are, but it's a little sensor, but it's a lot bigger than a webcam sensor. And they have an HDMI output, and so they're not constrained by USB, with that's expecting like software processing to do a lot of the work. They have a pretty decent quality level, and you can get one of those for under $200. You need an HDMI capture card. There's another $100 there. You need some, if you're going to do this, so we're talking mixed reality, you're going to want some kind of a green screen. You can do it without a green screen, which is actually how I started. You can get Microsoft Kinects, do little IR depth sensing, and I started with one of those, Kinect version 2, using some software that I found on the internet from a guy who later ended up working at Live, the company that makes the mixed reality technology. To layer that with the tools to make mixed reality, and you get virtual green screen. And I was definitely one of the first people doing that, other than the guy that actually made the software, who wasn't a streamer, and I was. So I was definitely one of the first streamers to use a green screenless setup for mixed reality. And then it grew out of there. I eventually got a green screen, and I got a GoPro, and I wasn't satisfied with the quality. Because I have a little bit of experience with cameras, and so then I got a mirrorless camera, and then it was like, oh well, this one actually for HDMI quality isn't very good. Which one do I get? I obsess over it for months, and I swap it out, and I go, okay, Panasonic GH5, top of the line in my price range, which is still a lot of money. It was over $1,000, but it's like this is it. This is the level. To go higher than this, you need to spend $10,000. No, not anymore, but back then, there wasn't really a lot in competition for that one. So I got that camera, the best camera. But how do you make it look good? Well, you have to learn all kinds of other things. And then you have to learn how to video grade if you want to make it look quite right. If you want to change the look on how the saturation looks, how bright it looks, how dark it looks, all of these different things. And
how much do you think over the last, say, like 4 years do you think you've spent on equipment to
many thousands of dollars. I mean, the biggest parts are the cameras. The lighting is relatively cheap. You definitely need some good lighting. You need lighting for your green screen. You want a key light. So I have, tons of lights in this room, 20,000 lumens. If you were to go and measure the lumens, is like, yeah, you need to light 3 walls. You need to light yourself. You're talking about a lot of light. Cameras love light. You want the camera to look good. You need a lot of light.
That's another thing too, is space, I guess, as well. Like, if it's unique to VR, is that you need that physical space. Doing it in your bedroom in the corner is probably not as
and if you're a mixed reality streamer, you have to have space to put the camera and things like that, and so that adds up a lot. But if you're not doing mixed reality, you can get by with a pretty low amount of space. I've known people who were Beat Saber first person perspective streamers that were literally playing on the space where their bed was. They move their bed out of the way, they like flip it up against the wall, and they go stand in this 3 foot by 5 foot box, and they're doing their Beat Saber thing. But if you try to stream that, if you try to turn that into a camera, mixed reality content, you'd be pretty challenged. It'd be pretty hard to do, and you'd probably get frustrated and go back to first person. So yeah, mixed reality streaming, everybody's like, oh, I want a bigger play space. I have a decent amount. It's pretty wide, but I hit my wall sometimes. If I play, so like one of the thing that was my claim to fame, what got me on the map from being a mildly successful, maybe moderately successful VR streamer. I had like 1,200 followers on Twitter, on Twitch before Beat Saber came out, and then in less than a year, I had like 20,000. So I went in a niche, VR streaming a couple hours a night. Was I invented Darth Maul mode for Beat Saber, where instead of playing with 2 controllers, 1 saber in each hand, I invented a little contraption. I took some of that VR gun stock equipment that I had that connects your controllers to rigid objects to use like a rifle. It's like, I can rearrange this and make a Darth Maul saber. And it's like, I'm gonna just try Beat Saber that way. Maybe I'll be Star Wars kid, make some really cringe, embarrassing video. And I did, and it was pretty cringy, but at the same time, I had lightsabers and I could pretend to be Darth Maul. And I fell in love with it right away. I was like, this is actually really cool. And the next day, I uploaded my video to Twitter, and like it totally blew up. People were like, what is this going on? Nobody had, I was totally unique in this aspect compared to other people making Beat Saber mixed reality videos. And like it was covered on some VR news site, and it got picked up by like IGN. And so I kind of went viral off of that, and I got a bunch of views, and I uploaded it to Reddit, and Reddit is probably the real source of it blowing up.
I think that could be one of the advantages of being in such a VR as a platform is still relatively new, and it's still finding its feet, especially in the consumer side of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost an advantage that you have in terms of the content, is many of the stuff people have not seen before. You're pioneering a new type of content.
Yeah, it's an advantage. There's every, just about every time, multiple times per week, people are like, I've never seen anything like this before. It's like, why don't you have more streamers? Why don't you have more viewers? Whatever. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I hear those kinds of things a lot, and yeah, it's something that nobody's ever seen before. But that's also why it's still niche. Is people don't know about it. It's not something everybody's playing with. Call of Duty. How many millions of copies do they sell a year? All the big streamers doing Call of Duty stuff. Everybody's, oh yeah, I want to go see Call of Duty. Who blah blah. Oh, Shroud's playing it, or Tim Tatman's playing it, or whoever. All these people who are popular streamers. They're some of these people are really popular streamers because they're playing popular games. People know. Say, I want to go search on Twitch for Call of Duty, and hey, I'll watch the most popular person on there.
It's definitely true.
It's a part of a growing part.
A smaller game can be easier to definitely get a start in, but when you want to try and break through to the top end, it helps when you're playing with something that's got a huge amount of demand. On the
discoverability just goes up because people know it exists.
Yep.
VR people don't know it exists.
On your journey as a content creator, you've you have a partner on Twitch. You're still working full time at your gig, and you're streaming in the evenings.
Mm-hmm.
When you reflect back over the last 3-4 years, and the kind of the ups and downs that you've had throughout your content journey, would you say there's a sense of a blueprint for you as a content creator that you've followed, or is it more, figuring it out as you go, especially because you're such a pioneer of a new vertical?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of stuff I've seen that I feel like there is maybe a little bit of a blueprint, and I think it's an advantage for people as a way to differentiate themselves. If you're a Call of Duty streamer, how are you going to differentiate yourself from another streamer? Well, you have other overlays, maybe you have integrations. There's some people that's like, player versus stream, where you program some stuff to integrate with your game and causes like your mouse to get reversed when somebody does something. There's different ways you can do it there, but everybody's Call of Duty streams look pretty similar because the game looks the same. First person VR is along those same lines. Like I mentioned, there's all kinds of things you can do to optimize your view and make it look a little different. But it's still, one first person VR game like Half-Life Alyx, somebody stream for that is going to look pretty similar to somebody else's stream. But with mixed reality, with a camera, you're a TV producer, you're a movie producer.
You're a performer as well at that point.
You're the performer, you're the director, you're the writer, you're the performer. And something that I've started doing recently, that I've just had more fun with Beat Saber doing this than before. Whereas I'm making what I call Beat Saber Cinema, or a Malvi, which is just a kind of a joke on a movie of Darth Maul Beat Saber gameplay, where I have these tripods, I have these desk mounts, the cameras, I have a pretty big green screen, I have good lighting. Like if I take that camera and put it in a different position, I have a different angle. And then if I record a bunch of runs at different angles, I can edit that together like a music video.
It's almost like you've got a camera on a roller going around you. Almost.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a rotation thing for Beat Saber where the rotates the room while I'm playing, and the mixed reality view sees all this stuff happening, and people are like, how are you doing that? When I'm like trying to figure out, I'm like using DaVinci Resolve, which is a professional nearline editor and or nonlinear editor, and I'm like, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. These are people who are professionally like making movies and TV shows, editing content, and like, how do I do this? Like, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm doing something not like, it's just a hobby. I'm not doing anything that like anybody else does it. And I was like, oh, okay, figured it out. Thanks. Looks great. It's like, hey, share a clip. I was like, okay, these are professionals. And I show them like the clip and they're like, how are you doing that? When I see somebody who's like a professional video producer go, how are you doing that? I'm like, okay, I did my job right.
I love it. I mean, it comes back to when we were first starting this podcast was, you just figure out how to get things to work.
Yeah.
You just figure it out. And I think that is going to be one of the things that will continue to set you apart, especially as VR becomes more mainstream, is that you're pioneering the forefront of this space with your content and experimenting, continually trying new things. And quite frankly, I'm positive a lot of our listeners are going to go, how does his content look? I want to go check out his content after this. I want to see the setup. Where would they find you if they wanted to go check it out?
YouTube. So the best place for content, especially like I mentioned, if I'm spending a whole night, several hours, or multiple shoots, putting together like 10 runs of one song, and then I'm editing all those angles together, Twitch is not the best place for that. Is you want the final product, and that's on YouTube. So youtube.com/RageSAQ is my channel. And the most recent one I have up there is the last one I did, where I was like, I'm just gonna live go through, cut this video. Let's try this angle. And so I made it interactive. I was talking with chat. I was like, hey, chat, what do you think about this angle? There's what I see. I've got a monitor up by my camera.
That's fascinating. And I actually think I've seen more
it's been
content
so much
creators kind of bring their community into the process, because usually that's like shut off and you don't show that. And I think it's actually a really cool angle is bring them into the process.
And a bunch of people were like, what is he doing? What is Rage doing tonight? It's like, why is he messing around with the cam? Why is the angle all weird? Why are we looking at the ceiling right now? I'm like, I'm just moving the tripod. And I'm going to get an angle. You know, I'm thinking like, let me put the camera on the floor and angle it up and see what that looks like. And, you know, we'll spend 20 minutes setting up a shot or 30 minutes setting up a shot for me to run through it in 4 minutes, do a 4-minute song in Beat Saber. But, you know, I feed on the energy. I've always liked really interacting with chat. And so somebody, you know, maybe throws a meme in there and I start joking on it and there's a bloopers reel at the end of this video. So it's like this one, my music, the one I published like a week ago, it's like, this one's going to be the real thing. It's something I haven't ever, like, I've done it once or twice, putting in the effort to edit together a bunch of shots and try to make like a music video. It's like, I'm going to have an intro, I'm going to have the content, I'm going to have an outro. What do I do for an outro? After a bunch of goofy stuff was happening, I'm like, it's going to be a bloopers reel. And so I just put a bunch of silly stuff in, you know. I was like, at one point in time, I was like, I'm going to hold the camera in my hand like a vlogger, and I'm going to have my saber in the other hand. And like, that was a dumb idea. I was like worried I was going to drop the camera. I'm like, and so I'm just like, so that's like one of the first things in the blooper reel is I'm like, oh my God, this is a terrible idea. Why am I doing this? So, you know, trying stuff like that was a suggestion from Chad, I think. It's like, do a vlog. I was like,
the best
vlog.
thing is when your chat's the one helping you co-create the content. It's the best thing.
Yeah, it's great. And so we were all joking around, and it, you know, they were making me laugh, I was making them laugh, and so that, you know, that shows up in the content. You know, the blooper reel is me just doing a bunch of dumb stuff and having a hilarious time doing it, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, Rage, I appreciate you so much for coming on. Listeners, go check us, especially if you're interested in VR. You got to go check out Rage. He's pioneering the forefront of content creation in VR, and it's just very clear how passionate you are as a tinkerer, like as a lifelong tinkerer.
Yeah, there's a lot you can tinker with in VR.
Things out. Yeah, and it's super cool to see that and that passion shines through. Rage, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. It was great.